Our next presentation is from the Division of Policy Development. The Division of Policy Development is responsible for providing administrative support and policy guidance to the professional boards in the state by facilitating board meetings, serving as liaisons between the boards and the department, and managing the administration of the administrative rule promulgation process for our self-regulated professions. The division also manages the administrative rule process for our professions and technical programs outside of our boards. This division is responsible for continuing education, examination requirements for our regulated professions, and the administration of the prescription drug monitoring program.
Good morning. My name is Brad Wojciechowski, and I would like to introduce Will Johnson and Tom Ryan. Together, we serve as the executive directors in the Division of Policy Development at the Department of Safety and Professional Services. We are the principal liaisons between the regulatory examining boards and the Department of Safety and Professional Services to assist the department's mission in promoting economic growth and stability while protecting the citizens of Wisconsin as designated by statute. Each executive director is responsible for multiple boards as they relate to business, mental health services, healthcare, and trade code advisory councils. Working with our colleagues in the division, we completed 208 board, section, and council meetings in 2022. So far in 2023, we have facilitated 96 meetings. We like to think of the executive directors as the eyes and ears of the department as it relates to board activities. Today, we will focus on three main services we provide to the 72 regulatory examining boards and respective professional sections, advisory committees, and trade councils supported by the department: the facilitator, operations liaison, and policy advisor. On behalf of the executive directors, we appreciate and thank you for your willingness to serve the state of Wisconsin. As executive directors, we develop, review, and approve the agenda and agenda materials to ensure the meetings are executed successfully. For example, during the fall of each year, DPD will send out planning materials with dates to each board member to establish the subsequent year's meeting dates and times. The board then reviews those dates at the first meeting as a reminder, or if a scheduling conflict has arisen, to verify the board will have quorum or supermajority for the closed session. For example, the accounting examining board is a 7-member board. For a meeting to be called to order, we need to have 5 members present. Prior to calling the meeting to order, the process for a successful board meeting really begins 8 days prior. Working with board chair, outside stakeholders who wish to address issues during a board meeting, and working with our colleagues across divisions at DSPS, the executive director helps the bureau assistant with putting the meeting agenda materials together and sending the agenda to the chair for their review and approval to post the materials on our SharePoint site 4 days prior to the board meeting. Once the agenda is approved, we host pre-meetings 24 to 48 hours prior to the meeting with board counsel, the administrative rule coordinator, and internal staff to walk through the agenda to discuss any issues that may arise during the meeting. Once board staff discusses the agenda with the executive director will meet with the board chair to walk through the upcoming meeting. We do this to ensure that the meeting follows all standard procedures and to maintain proper decorum throughout the meeting. Working with the board chair, we discuss upcoming rule matters, potential travel opportunities, and outline a public agenda request item of an issue that an outside stakeholder would like to bring to the board's attention. We will also discuss which items will need a motion to move forward or a member who needs to be recognized for their service to the state of Wisconsin. As members of the board enter the boardroom, the executive director is making sure each member is confirmed as being present. Once the decorum is established, the meeting can proceed at the appropriate time as published on the agenda. As an executive director, I like to confirm with the chairperson if they are ready to proceed with the agenda and ask for the chairperson's permission if the executive director can address the board members and members of the public on housekeeping matters before the agenda has been approved by motion. Examples are, I would like to remind attendees to please mute their lines if not actively speaking, inform guests to utilize the raised hand feature, address the board when only acknowledged by the chairperson, highlight the agenda item titled Public Comments, which is at the end of the open session, and remind members to please state their name while making and seconding a motion. After the executive director's housekeeping items have been completed, the executive director will turn the floor over to the chair to approve the agenda and the meeting minutes of the previous meeting. Once the board approves the agenda and minutes from the previous meeting by motion, we will then be able to move to the business of the board. For example, as you review the agenda prior to the meeting, you will notice that certain items will have be in bold font or may have a discussion and consideration notice after the title. During the first meeting of each year, each board elects new officers to ensure we continue having a neutral, fair, and unbiased board leadership. Once elections of the chairperson, vice chairperson, and secretary have been voted on, under the purview of the elected chair, the chair can discuss and consider delegate liaisons to work with the department on board business that may occur in between regularly scheduled meetings. The administrative processes continue as we review open meeting laws, travel reimbursement policies, and discuss the current year meeting dates. As we move into the body of the agenda, DSPS follows Robert's Rules of Order for public meetings. In order for a full board to discuss, consider, or potentially act on items, we must properly inform the public on matters before the board. Once the discussion by the board has concluded, the board may decide to act on the item by making a motion. For a motion to be considered, a member of the board will have to be recognized by the chairperson, and the chair will then call for a second to the motion. The chairperson will read the motion as written and bring the motion up for discussion. Once the discussion has been concluded, the chairperson will call for a vote. For example, throughout your tenure, you will notice that certain steps of the rule promulgation process need to be approved by the board in order to move forward. Once the board discusses the potential rule they would like to promulgate, the board makes a motion to request a scope statement to be written by the administrative rule coordinator. This is just one example of how the board chair and the regulatory board work alongside the executive director and DSPS staff to help facilitate the rule promulgation process. As you can see from the examples discussed, facilitating board meetings is really impacted by our ability to prepare, have clear lines of communication between the board members and ourselves for a smooth meeting. Now I'll turn the floor over to Will Johnson, who will discuss the importance of the second topic we will discuss this morning, board operations liaison.
Thanks, Brad. Hello, I'm Will Johnson. As we mentioned, the executive director encompasses, so I'll just put notes. There we go. As we mentioned, the executive director encompasses many roles, and one of those is an operations liaison. Executive directors are the principal liaison between the professional boards and the department. We are the connection between the decisions being made in board meetings and the implementation of those decisions. For example, if a board decides to, by rule, increase the number of hours needed for continuing education required to renew a license, the department staff in charge of processing renewals needs to be made aware of those changes. Here are a few other ways that we like to think of the executive director as an operations liaison. We are your first point of contact with the department. As executive directors, we are the catch-all for your questions, ideas, concerns, or feedback regarding DSPS. Each of us works with multiple boards, so we are the best place to go if you have a question, because we have likely heard a similar question before, or we should know the person who can answer your question if it's not us. Instead of you calling or emailing everyone you can think of, call us. We promise to be efficient and timely in our response to you. Just like there's a hierarchy at your workplace, there's a process here at DSPS, and we want to be able to work through our channels so that we can get you the most accurate information from the best person who can answer your question. Finally, we want to encourage you to ask us first so that you don't break quorum. This should be a top concern for you, and we'll help make sure that you're following the rules. We can help facilitate any timely communication with the rest of the board when it's necessary. As Brad mentioned earlier, the executive director, as viewed through the lens of an operations liaison, also works with various department staff. Here's a sampling of some of our colleagues you'll most likely interact with. The board legal counsel. Board legal counsel helps us make sure that we are following open meeting laws, which require us to notice any topic the board wishes to discuss. If the discussion becomes too broad or veers off topic, this is when your board legal counsel or your executive director will step in and help keep the discussion in line with what was posted on the agenda. Board legal counsel also drives any closed session disciplinary actions. They will help explain each case and answer any questions board members may have. You will also work with administrative rules coordinators. Administrative rule coordinators, or ARCs, help keep the board on track with rule projects. ARCs get the language in place and work with outside agencies such as the Legislative Reference Bureau to advance the scope statements that each board develops. The administrative rule coordinators interact with the governor's office as well as the legislature to complete rule projects. This includes submitting scope projects to the governor's office for their approval and taking direction from the legislature regarding public hearing requests. Often, you'll see the ARCs work in your meetings when they provide updates on rule projects or when they ask if there are any new project requests. They will also display a project chart that details all the current projects that are before your board. As Brad also mentioned, we work a lot with the Bureau Services team. The Bureau Services team work behind the scenes to help us facilitate smooth meetings by running the meeting platform, recording minutes, and numerous other tasks. The BAs really are the unsung heroes of our meetings. BAs send out meeting invites, reminders, and track attendance and public member participation. As you'll later hear, BAs submit per diems for members and provide research for travel requests. They can also help coordinate approved travel. Finally, I want to highlight our teammates in credentialing who you heard from earlier. If questions come up about a licensure requirement in a meeting, our partners in credentialing are available to help us answer any questions and provide guidance. Now, I want to quickly highlight a couple other roles that are available to you as a board member. Each board has a variety of liaison positions so that your work can continue between meetings if necessary, or to allow board members to travel to state and national conferences that are related to your profession. Every board is different, but here's a small sampling of some of the common liaison positions. The education liaison works with the licensed exam specialists in conjunction with the Office of Education and Exams. A credentialing liaison works directly with the team in credentialing to help keep the process moving when necessary between meetings. And many boards delegate a member to be a travel liaison so that they can attend state and national conferences that are related to each board's profession. Another resource that executive directors can provide is by helping answer questions about the board appointment process with the governor's office. While we don't make the final decision on who gets appointed, that authority is held by the governor and the appointment must be confirmed by the Senate. We can help answer questions about the process, what it's like to be on the board, and what your roles and responsibilities are while serving. Lastly, just like today's event, executive directors will provide various training opportunities for new and experienced board members throughout your term. Now, before I go, I just want to reiterate that your board's executive director should be your first point of contact for any questions, concerns, or feedback that you may have. The easiest way to get the right answer the first time is to make your executive director your first call. Thanks for your time. And now I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Tom Ryan.
Good morning. My name is Tom Ryan, and I currently serve 19 boards, councils, and committees within the department. In addition to the administrative and operational tasks that Brad and Will discussed, there's another role for the board executive director I would like to describe, the policy advisor role. So what does the policy advisor role involve? Executive directors work with board members, agency staff, and others to provide research and analysis on topics within the business of boards, councils, and committees, and we advise board members on policy concepts and initiatives. Usually this will relate in some way to the three main board activities: rule writing, credentialing, and enforcement. This may include requests that come from boards, councils, or committees, from the public, or from others. It may take the form of identifying the pros and cons of policy alternatives and possibly recommending potential courses of action, or research and comparison information. What are other states doing? How are they doing it more efficiently or effectively? What are national best practices in the regulation of the profession or occupation, and how do we compare? As policy advisors, executive directors are liaisons with national regulatory federations that serve state boards in their public protection mission. Many federations are involved with the national qualifying examination for a profession, and they serve the jurisdiction in many other ways. They offer programs and services intended to promote uniformity in the state-based system, and they are often at the forefront of license portability initiatives such as interstate compacts. Most importantly, for executive directors acting within the policy advisor role, the federations act as a clearinghouse for states on law and policy-related matters. Some produce model practice acts. And let me pause here to suggest that if your profession has a model practice act, speak to your executive director about your board comparing it with your own statutes and rules. The Model Practice Act is often the best resource available all in one place for the most up-to-date set of laws and policies for state boards to consider as they continually work toward updating their own laws. Federations publish journals and papers on regulatory best practices, maintain a network of executive directors from the states, and distribute information to the states on current topics of interest to regulatory boards. And on the screen, you'll see just 3 of the many federations we work with. Examples of some topics that the federations are currently tracking are: 1, matters regarding applicant and licensee mental health. There's a growing awareness of the impact of the mental health of licensees on the practice of the profession or occupation, and also its impact on those they serve. How boards are managing mental health challenges is evolving. You may be aware that there are a couple of different ways to go at this. On the application side, regulators in many states are rewriting the substance abuse and mental health questions on license applications to focus them on the presence or absence of current impairments that have meaning in the context of the professional's ability to safely practice their profession. In addition, many professions have some kind of a professional health program to guide the rehabilitation of professionals that have an impairing or potentially impairing condition, like substance abuse or burnout. The programs offer confidentiality to those who report to them. With public health and safety being paramount, this confidentiality or safe haven feature, while not absolute, is intended to encourage more reporting and early intervention. Ideally, this intervention occurs prior to functional impairment. Wisconsin's program is operated at DSPS, and the state statute includes substance abuse reporting, but unlike many states, it does not currently permit mental health reporting. Number 2, then there is artificial intelligence, the emerging technological innovation we've been hearing so much about. AI is anticipated to have a large impact on professions and occupations. So what will this mean for the regulation of individuals working within an AI environment? How will supervision work, for example? Or how will boards deal with a complaint involving artificial intelligence? And last, workforce data. Some states have undertaken projects to assess workforce with data from the licensing authorities. The data can be useful because it provides a nearly complete sample size for a profession. That can produce a more accurate indication of how the workforce is distributed statewide or in a particular region, and it can aid in identifying shortage areas, for example, or creating projections on changing demographics, such as how an aging workforce may impact the delivery of services in years to come. One initiative that is ongoing nationally that is frequently called for policy advice is the search for ways to prevent human trafficking in the massage profession through an improved regulatory framework in the states. This involves looking for ways to prevent fraud in the application process by human traffickers who have learned to exploit the system to obtain licenses by illicit means. States need to be diligent in learning to recognize common inconsistencies in application paperwork, unusual conduct, and any other indication of association with illicit massage establishments or human traffickers. It means increasing communication among states through data reporting to improve awareness of human traffickers that cross jurisdictional boundaries to avoid consequences, detection, and to hide offenses. It also involves improving massage school review standards so that one state's lower standards do not become another state's problem when licensees move from state to state. One ongoing initiative is to continually improve exam security to prevent cheating on the qualifying exams. The tactics used by human traffickers to harvest examination questions and then share them, for example, are ever changing. In addition, about half the states have enacted regulations of massage establishments, something that law enforcement often requests. So one question is whether Wisconsin should consider legislation to regulate massage establishments. Currently, Wisconsin regulates massage professionals, but not their businesses. Regulating the businesses would provide more options to make it more difficult for human trafficking operators to function. This is the kind of project that will engage the executive director's policy advisor role, and human trafficking impacts many other professions and occupations. Also, it contains broader lessons for other regulators interested in improving their regulatory framework. To review, diligent application review is necessary to prevent fraud. Communication among states and national data reporting widens exposure of applicants who should not be granted a license. And it increases the likelihood that licensees who have a record in one state will be brought to the attention of other states before critical decisions are made. A secure exam is also a hallmark of a sound licensing system. How your program measures up on these and other ways is an important question for boards and the policy advisor. Thank you. I will now turn over to Melaja Hardeen, who will address the rule writing process.
Good morning. My name is Melaja Hardeen. I am one of 3 administrative rules coordinators on the policy development team. Each one of us is assigned several different boards and professions to coordinate your administrative rules for. It's just going to provide a brief overview of the process. Some of the big areas that we tend to work on are legal research, drafting rules, data analysis, and ensuring that procedures are followed. So just looking at this chart, there's a lot there, and I promise this is a high level and brief overview. But just a note up top that this process might change depending on where your statutory authority is for your board or your committee, and whether or not the rule writing authority is with the department. So the first out of the 6 stages you see there on the screen, stage 1 is all about the statement of scope. This is how we open the process and get a rule project going. So usually a rule project is initiated by a change in the statute that necessitates a change in your administrative code. So when that happens, we prepare a scope statement in conjunction with the board or separately, depending on where your authority is. Once the scope statement is ready to go, we send it to the DOA for review. Their legal team reviews it, and then it goes to the governor for review, and then it goes for publication in the legislature's administrative register. There's a wait period there where the legislature could order a preliminary hearing on the scope statement. If they do that, then we need to have that hearing before we can move forward. If they don't order a preliminary hearing, then we can go ahead and approve the scope for implementation and move forward. So having an implemented scope is the big piece here. In order to start drafting, you cannot start drafting of any kind or any discussions about drafting until you have a scope that's been implemented. So going on to stage 2, initial drafting. So this is really when we can get into your part of the administrative code and what changes need to be made or moved around, or new things need to be repealed or replaced, things like that. All those can be discussed within the confines of the scope statement. So depending on how broad or narrow we wrote the scope, that's where we can focus in on the administrative code. Once we get a draft that we like and the board is happy with, then we can move on to doing an economic impact analysis. That includes a fiscal estimate, that includes public comment on their economic impact of the rule or the potential impact of the rule. And also public hearing, which is part of step 3. So the initial economic impact analysis, once we have all of those pieces, we put them together and they go with the rule to the governor for review once we have that public hearing. So for stage 3, external reviews, that's when we have the clearinghouse review the rule. These are staff in the Legislative Reference Bureau at the legislature. They will review for style and format within the administrative code. They have a specific way that things need to be formatted and placement in the code and whether or not your citations are accurate. So we'll pull those all together and then have a public hearing where we'll discuss the economic impact analysis, the initial draft, and any comments that the legislative staff have about your style or format or grammar. And we'll take all that feedback and combine it going into step 4 for the final agency review. We respond to the legislative clearinghouse, any of their comments. We review public comments and feedback and make changes depending on what comments we get. And then we send it over to the governor once we have a final draft that the board approves of. Step 5, legislative review. We refer the rule over to the legislature after it's been approved by the governor. Each house of the legislature gets 30 days to review in their standing committees. These are passive reviews. The Assembly and the Senate reviews tend to happen on the same schedule, more or less, and then once each standing committee has passed it along to the joint committee will have 30 days from when they pick it up to do their review. This is where they have an opportunity to object. If there are objections, there are other processes that are triggered depending on what type of objection it is. But if there are no objections, then we can go ahead and move forward with adoption and publication. So if you're a board, it'll come back to the board for adoption and then it'll get published with the Legislative Reference Bureau and effective, depending on when your effective date is at the bottom of the rule. Usually that is the first day after publication in the Administrative Register. So just briefly looking at this whole timeline, there are some estimates about how long these take. Again, these are estimates. It depends on what the project is, what kind of feedback you get from the public, how many times we need to revise the draft, things like that. Once a scope has been implemented, we have 30 months to get it to the legislature. So you do have 30 months for most projects, and a lot of them do fall into this standard timeline of 7.5 to 13 months, but some of them don't because of some of those things that I just mentioned. So just keep in mind that this is an example of the process, best case scenario, if everything is moving the way that it normally does. So now I'll turn it over to Joan Gage to talk about our Education and Exams Office.
Thank you, Nalasha. Hello, my name is Joan Gage, and I'm the Program Manager of the Office of Education and Examination, or as we're often referred to as OEE. OEE provides technical advice on all matters related to education and examinations. 3 licensed exam specialists are assigned to specific boards and councils, much like rule coordinators and bureau assistants. 2 specialists focus on business and health professions, while the 3rd works solely with skilled trades. We work with boards to administer the review and approvals of schools, programs, courses, and/or faculty. This process is performed by the board-designated education liaison with the support from a licensed exam specialist or by an assigned licensed exam specialist if that authority has been delegated to us by the board. The Office of Education and Examination creates and administers all jurisprudence exams, which are open book online exams available to applicants 24/7, 365. Most pre-licensed examinations are designed and delivered by Associated National Professional Organizations. However, There are several exams that are designed and administered by OEE. OEE facilitates and/or administers the approval of education, both pre-licensure and CE, as well as examinations for over 260 professional and skilled trade credentials. We also process special accommodation requests for exams, whether they're administered in person here at Hill Farms or administered outside of the department through national professional organizations and third-party examination vendors. Thank you for your time and attention, and now I'll turn it over to Brenda.
I'm Brenda Taylor, Board Services Supervisor, and along with Bureau Assistants Caitlin Schwartz and Diala Azam, we are your Board Services team. We compile meeting agendas and materials, notice meetings and distribute materials, record board meeting motions and draft minutes, manage meeting logistics and lodging arrangements, and we process reimbursements, including per diem payments and travel expenses. The state of Wisconsin's open meeting law requires all boards provide public notice at least 24 hours in advance of their meetings. This law is designed to ensure that the public has the right to attend and participate in governmental meetings and decision-making. The notice must include the following information: the name of the board, the date, time, and place of the meeting, including links if offered virtually, and the subject matter of the meeting. In our case, the agenda and open session materials. We take deadlines seriously. If we fail to provide public notice of a meeting, the meeting may be declared invalid. This means that any decisions made at the meeting may be void. As part of noticing, each board has its own public-facing website and meetings page. For you, the meeting page is a great backup if you need to locate the virtual call-in link or open session materials. Meeting dates are shared at the beginning of the year, and individual meeting invitations are sent to board members 4 to 7 days in advance of each meeting. These invitations will drop into your calendar after you accept the meeting. RSVPs are important as we plan for attendance to meet quorum requirements. Open the invitation to find important links to the meeting agenda, supporting materials, virtual meeting connection links, and in-person wayfinding, parking, and room location information. The meeting materials link in your meeting invitation will bring you to a password-secured SharePoint site where a full packet, including an agenda, plus open session and closed session materials, is posted for your review. On occasion, items are added after the board receives initial notice. Please check your SharePoint site prior to the meeting for additional materials. If you have any issues accessing your SharePoint account, you should contact us, the Board Services team. Reimbursements and per diem payments are paid to board members using the same system as state payroll. Board members are invited to create profiles within the STAR financial system. Keep your information current using your personal login and the self-service website. Per diem is Latin for by the day. Claim your per diem allowance monthly by reporting your participation in meetings plus work done on behalf of the board. Board-related activities qualify for per diem payment when reported in 5-hour increments. Members delegated to represent the board at regional and national meetings may be required to travel. Reimbursable travel expenses are based on pre-approved budgets and a state policy for allowable expenses. Bureau assistants will help outline guidelines for your travel when we confirm your travel arrangements. The Pocket Travel Guide is a great reference to review prior to departure. You'll find it on the board SharePoint site along with the reimbursement request form. Every board member is responsible for following the travel policy, retaining required receipts, and submitting expense reports within 30 days of the event. The following expenses are typical reimbursement allowables by the state of Wisconsin: airfare and ground transportation, lodging, meals, parking, and baggage fees. The following expenses are not reimbursable by the state of Wisconsin: personal and entertainment expenses, gifts and souvenirs, alcohol or tobacco products, gambling losses, or non-business related expenses. Please work with your board executive director to identify opportunities to represent Wisconsin, voting as an official delegate, plus participation in reporting requirements of conferences and business meeting travel on behalf of the state. Thanks. Renee?